Sorry about that. The video froze. I don't know why it does that, but you have to move the cursor around constantly, or eventually, after a few minutes, it'll freeze up. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. So I didn't want to do the rest of the video in just freeze frame there. So this is part two of the John Lennon Imagine album review. I'm doing his records in order of release, just like I did with the other three Beatles. And he's the last one I'm doing. So once I'm done with this, I'll move on to something else. So the fifth song and the closing song on side one of Imagine is I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, Mama, I Don't Want to Die. When I got this album back when I was a kid, when I was, like I said, 13 or whatever, I used to skip this all the time. I thought this was the dullest, just repetitive, lasted too long, and thought it was kind of a crap song. In the years since, my opinion has changed quite a bit. It's not the best song on the album, or not John's best solo song by any means or anything like that, but it is a very musically rich and abundant, just all sorts of kind of neat things going on musically in this song. If you take the time to listen to it, it's you got a lot of the bass, the sax from King Curtis, the percussion is nice. It's just sort of a cool, soulful, laid back groove of a song. It feels to me like kind of a distant cousin to Police and Thieves by The Clash on their first album, which would not come out for about 5 years after this album, but and that's not even a Clash song. That's them covering, I think, Junior Wells, an old reggae song that they cover on their first album. But that's got sort of a similar vibe on it, and I do like the kind of, I can't make the sound, but the noise at the end of the song reminds me of a little bit, even though it doesn't sound exactly the same, but sort of that machine gun blast sound at the beginning of Maggot Brain, the great Funkadelic album that also came out in 1971. That one came out in July 71, so came out like 3 months before Imagine album, and a little bit like the noise at the beginning of What Is Soul, another great song by Funkadelic that's on their debut album from 1970. So that noise at the very end of I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. Like I said, sometimes you change your opinion on songs. When I was a kid, I thought this was just strictly Dullsville, but I give it an 8 now. I think it's a pretty good piece of music. So then we flip over to side two. The first song on side two, Give Me Some Truth. Probably my favorite song on the album. So it gets a 10. Big surprise there. The slide guitar from George. The rough, raspy vocal from John. The subject matter, he's singing about Nixon and Vietnam and so forth, which were what was happening back in 1971, but unfortunately the subject matter still applies today. Politicians and so forth are still by and large and shitbags, so it still applies. But yeah, it gives me a 10. It gets a 10 from me, and the album's best rocker, I guess. This might be John's best solo rocker, in my opinion, though there are a couple others from later albums that will be in the running too. And kind of like I said when I was doing the George albums, that a lot of stuff there that I love, but I wish George would have done more just rock and roll in his solo album career than he did. And the same with John. I think he didn't do enough, or not enough to my liking. Not to say he didn't do a lot of great music in his solo career, but I wish he would have done some more good rockers like Give Me Some Truth. And even you can kind of just enjoy it as a good rock and roll song, and you can pay attention to the message and the lyrics, or you can kind of just let that wash over you and enjoy it. Either way, it gets a 10. And from a rock and roll song, we go to a ballad, And another tender moment on the album, "Oh My Love" is the second song on side one. Uh, this is a good touching, just love song and ballad. It feels genuine and real, whereas you can compare this to the horror, the saccharine horror that is "My Love," the fake Hallmark sentiment song of Paul's. That's much as I love Paul's solo stuff, a lot of it hate "My Love," but this is like the anti "My Love," and that's a good thing because "Oh My Love," I'd give that a 9, and I think this is the way to do a ballad and to sort of sing true emotion. Obviously, it's John, uh, most obviously, I guess, in singing about Yoko, but it's "Oh My Love," so you can apply it to whoever the love of your life is and so forth. But it's a really good, touching, and tender ballad, well sung musically. It's a nice piece of music there. "Oh My Love" gets a 9, and then we get into the famous "How Do You Sleep?" John's dig and rant against his former bandmate and partner Paul McCartney, as the kind of tuning up the beginning like Sergeant Pepper. Um, I love this song. I'm going to give it a 10. It's loved it back when I first heard it when I was a kid. Always loved it through the years. It's just a dirty, nasty, low down, slinking, grinding rocker. Uh, so this might be just as good as "Give Me Some Truth." Give me some truth, a little bit of an edge to it. But "How Do You Sleep?" I'm going to give a 10 to. You got George's nasty guitar, Hopkins again on the piano, especially the part where the play out of the song, Hopkins' piano work is really, really nice and tasty, good stuff. Um, it's funny that none of the stuff that most of almost none of the stuff that John predicts in here comes true. The pretty face may last a year or two, but pretty soon they'll see what you can do. And then Paul ends up being by far the most successful of the solo Beatles as far as sales and chart wise and so forth. Um, it's unfortunate, the subject matter, and I can see where it turned a lot of Beatle fans off, especially in 1971. This being just, really right after the breakup of the Beatles and everything. But, you know, how many of us have never said something nasty, snide, mean, stupid against the people that we love the most, and in the heat of the moment, or um, difference is we're not famous, so it's not recorded, and for posterity forevermore, it's said and done and forgotten. If we're lucky, most of us it is. And then, later on, we reconsider and think, well, really shouldn't have done that, and that was stupid of me. So that's basically what this is. I mean, they were all still fighting about the breakup and the court battles going on, and feeling pretty lost without the Beatles and wondering what's next. And things like this are going to happen in moments like this. So subject matter, it's a shame. I don't think that they felt that way about each other through the rest of John's life. Probably didn't feel that way about each other through the rest of 1971, maybe even. Who knows? But it's a great rocker. It's a nice, snide, nasty song, kind of like the stuff Dylan did back in the early '60s. Even though more of a rock and roll song than Dylan's folk stuff, obviously. "How Do You Sleep?" Always loved the song. It gets a 10. And I always thought it would have been hilarious. It would have been classic if Paul would have like busted this out live in concert at some point. Just really would have been funny if he would have done it on the '76 tour, because it would have driven John crazy and would have been pretty funny in my opinion. But there you go. It's the Flux fiddlers that do the strings on here gives the song also. It's not a psychedelic song by any stretch of the means, and by this time, by Imagine, John is light years away from the Strawberry Fields, Sergeant Pepper Magical Mystery days. But the strings on here do sort of remind musically a little bit of some of the parts of "I'm the Walrus," so which is fitting because this is talking about Beatles stuff. So he probably wants to have a little bit of a Beatles sound, and he does have the Sergeant Pepper tune-up bit at the beginning to sort of throw back to that. So it makes sense. Fourth song, On side two is How, which was another one that when I was younger, I liked it more than I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, but I didn't like it all that much more, and I considered this one to be pretty boring too. Um, but I've learned to love it over the years. It's I call it John's Hamlet song because it's all about indecision. How do I move forward? What should I do? I'm not sure where to go next. Type of song. Um, how can I move forward? How can I give love when love is something I never had? So you got kind of a shades of Plastic Ono Band stuff here. This could have fit in on that album pretty well, but um, yeah, it's I love the drums too. The drums are pretty simple and straightforward. Alan White plays drums on here. He later played drums in Yes, and nothing nothing spectacular or flashy about them. Just sort of solid and just good drum bit though. Pretty straightforward and simple, but great stuff. So How gets a 8 from me, and the album concludes with an upbeat, jolly, jaunty song called "Oh Yoko," which is just a great voice of John. John's playing harmonica again for the first time in forever, and I don't know, this might be the last time he ever played harmonica on a record. Nicky Hopkins' piano, I keep saying again, is just sublime and superb in here. It's just this great, fun, bouncy song. I kind of picture John hanging out because some of this was recorded in England and some in America. He recorded a lot of this at some of it I think at Abbey Road, but a lot of it when he lived at Ascot, the Tittenhurst, and I'm sure John laughed over that all the time. That big white house that he had, that was second coolest Beatle house, I guess, in George's. Um, After George's second coolest Beatle house was John's house there, that big white house that he had, that mansion. So we recorded a lot of that there, and I just sort of see this song of him kind of hanging out with Yoko on a rainy fall day and just hanging out at the house and running around inside and outside. But it's a great love song. I mean, it is Oh Yoko, so it's obviously aimed at her, but you can. It might have been better if he would have just said "Oh baby" or something, maybe to make it more universal. But I mean, I think the song's so bouncy and contagious and happy that I think you can, if you've got your wife or girlfriend, you can kind of think of her in those terms. Just in the middle of the shave, in the middle of the bath, in the middle of the day, I think about you, I call your name, and yeah, I think it applies. And it's just a great song. I'm going to give it a 10. It's a great way to end the album. And I'm going to give the album a 10, like I did with Plastic Ono Band. I sometimes not sure whether I like Plastic Ono Band better or this better, and I go back and forth, but I think they're both a 10 in the end, and I think they're great. Unfortunately for John's solo career, I think it's downhill from here, which is not to say that there weren't moments, even great moments, on subsequent singles and solo albums, but I don't think he ever attained this level of quality after that he did on Plastic Ono Band and on the Imagine album, and certainly not what he did with the Beatles. I think, like I said, there are moments, and I don't think he ever again would put out an album that was consistently as good as this album or Plastic Ono Band, unfortunately. But there are a lot of good stuff here and there spread out throughout those albums, and so we'll get to that as we get to those other albums. That's all I got, and we will see you next time. Hope everybody's having a good time, all things considered, and we'll talk to you later.